So you know your podcast gonna start out good when you can't even put the title as the correct title of the show. One called it the 2018 year in review. Too bad it's only 2017. We're on the last day, Sunday, December the 31st, 2017. I'm your host, BT of the Past. This podcast is uploaded weekly, daily, as shows are posted using the Spreaker.com app. If you wanted to download that on Spreaker, you can go to Spreaker.com or you can download the app itself. Also, the episodes are recorded using the Blue Yeti microphone. And if you want to go back and listen to any of the previous episodes, you can go to pastpodcast.com. That is one of the big announcements that I will be addressing, among others, today. I have put this show off for good reason. A couple of friends, a couple of close folks to me have asked if I was planning on doing this as a overall, like when I record and have it as a live feed and get chat and feedback. I decided to not go that route strictly because I want to make sure if it's anything that I may forget, may have missing, want to be sure that I get all of the key topics and things addressed. Now, I will state that I have them listed in order. There is a lot. I will warn you in advance that the thoughts will be flying, and this is going to be my personal way of my branding and improvement. And I will tell you near the end of the show the motto for the year for next year, because I know a lot of people have been wondering because I usually will tell what that is, but I've been kind of quiet about it to some, but not everyone. And I'll give a more in-depth meaning as to what it entails. So we're not gonna, like I said, I have everything outlined, and you will read those, or we'll be able to see them in the show notes. And I'll make sure to put marks according to what's addressed as each topic is discussed. So there will be a lot, and there will be different points that you may want to go specifically to listen to. So with that being said, we'll just go ahead and hop right into it. The first big story, or the first thing that happened this year for me it's kind of always like the foundation of the start of the year. And this past year, this current year was my second time participating, and that was for Magfest. So a lot of you may or may not know about it. I may not have mentioned it, but it is an event called Magfest that happens in Maryland. It involves music and video games in one venue at one time. And there are multiple gamers, techies, cosplayers, you name it, you'll likely see it at this event. They have it annually, planning to attend actually in a couple of days. So I'll have a story prepared with that as well. But this year's Magfest was fun for me because this was my second year going. And there were two people who went with us. It was their first year going, and I'll actually talk about them later on in the year in review. But they attended and they had a good time. Like, they both enjoyed the venue, the facility, the ambiance, the routine. Because when you look at it, no one really knows going into it what to expect. But then it's kind of almost like being self-sufficient and say, hey, here's a controller or here's an arcade system. Go play, have fun. Like when you're a little kid, they give you some quarters and say, all right, run off, have fun, have a good time. Just act like I'm not here. And as I mentioned earlier, this coming Magfest is no exception. It will be one of a kind. Definitely planning to make the most of it. There will be, as there were this year, there will be plenty of videos, plenty of pictures, lots of fun, lots of foolishness. It's the best way to describe it. So one thing I have my topics listed in the order that I've kind of experienced them. So they will kind of go a little bit in order, but out of order. And I'll explain more in detail as to how, what I mean by that. So with the podcast itself, and first and foremost, I know for a lot of you all who may or may not know about my year review, I'll kind of explain. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. Usually each year, I'm not sure when I started this, but I would normally write a blog that explains everything that happened in that specific year. And for quite a few years, I've, had it written down and enjoyed the blog style of doing it. This year, I decided to kind of change things up just a little and give it a little bit of give it a more recorded based style and say, you know what, let me sit down, let me hop on the microphone, get some topics written out, and just kind of chop it up on each one. So when I initially did it, it really wasn't a solid, okay, these are the topics, I want to go this way, go this route, go that route. But with me doing this as a podcast, I will admit this year I learned about it from other businesses, but I experienced it personally, and that was rebranding. So basically with rebranding, and to give a fair warning, branding will be said, or you'll hear the term brand a lot in this podcast. It's just the best way to put it. And I may kind of give a little bit of insight as to the reference behind it. But this year, multiple companies, which I've talked about through a few episodes, Huffington Post, or rather HuffPost, Yahoo, AIM, even with them losing Instant Messenger, YouTube, there were many businesses and many major companies who woke up, looked at what they were doing, looked at their format, looked at their style, tuned in, and decided, hey, I want to go ahead and get the, get myself out there, but I'm going to do it in a different manner. And I know for me personally, I've been able to do that with this show. When 2017 started, the podcast literally had one of the longest names. It was called Brate Podcast. When I told people that, and when I was looking at the presentation and doing it, it was very long-winded. It was very challenging. The challenge for me has been, as far as keeping the links, having them all managed and not having to lose the content or lose the information, because I still kept everything, as you all will see in the image. I've still kept it as Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast. But as a couple of months went into 2017, the show kind of went into a bit of a shift. It actually, and I don't have anything that actually don't discuss this in my notes, but I will state this now. I initially had been doing the show as I'm doing it now, just me, just sitting down, giving y'all feedback, giving you talks or my opinions on various topics. A couple of weeks passed, time progressed, and I realized, as much as I would like to do this by myself, having help will make this a little easier and less stressful. So, as many of you all that have been listening for a while are aware, and we are still a team, so I don't want that to be misinterpreted either. Dimitri came on and literally came in and just picked up and rolled with the show. And we haven't looked back since. In the midst of, like I said, starting out, it was Brate Podcast. We were recording shows at the library, kind of just getting a weekly show in. We would kind of have to do improv shows, away from the library, but we were getting shows done. And then a few months into 2017, the change became to be the Past Podcast. Because it was, all right, we're doing, since we're doing a show and we mostly talk about sports and stuff, we kind of made it the podcast about sports and stuff. And then realizing that Past Podcast was redundant, it just simply became the Past. Now, granted, if you go on Instagram, if you go on Snapchat, if you go on Facebook, Twitter, it's still Past Podcast. That was just easier to keep and much more maintainable and manageable. And also the website itself ties into that being the case, with it being pastpodcast.com. Connection. So that's kind of like an overall view of how the podcast kind of went through its stint and its stages. As as many of you may or may not be aware, this is my first recording in about, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks. Shows will pick back up again obviously in the new year. Initially, the plan was to not start until the 8th, or rather, I'm sorry, the 15th. There will be a show being recorded, possibly 9 times out of 10 there's going to be a show recorded while I'm at Magfest. How or when or how that all comes into play, I can't forecast to give an answer to that yet. All I can tell you is just hang around and just keep listening. But the show has definitely been a wake-up call for me in learning how to approach podcasting. Because if you were to go back and listen to shows at the beginning of the year when I didn't have topics, or I would have topics but no links, or I would have links and not really discuss anything related to the link, that's all going to change. That all has been in the works of being changed, and it will be changed going into the new year. If you have not already listened to the episode, I believe it was 141. I might be wrong because I'm not good with numbers sometimes, and I'm not going to run for my phone right this second because I usually keep it away from the show. But the shows were kind of not as organized and as fluid and consistent. And I'm sorry, it was episode 142. So 142 basically described me kind of reaching out to letting you all know how there will be changes. And I'm not going to, like I said, I don't want to give a lot of attention to 142. If you want to go back and refer to it, I definitely can add that in the show notes as far as a episode to refer to. And y'all know me, I'm typing in ADD and, well, not ADD, multitasking. Learned that from personal experience. I don't have ADD. I always claim that, and it's not a good thing to say. But anyway, moving forward, I have been put in a position, and I personally was placed with the realization that there were a lot of people that came into my life for a reason, and there were a lot of people who were in my life for a season. I appreciated those who were around. Some of them didn't make it with me through the year. Now, as many people are going to do, and as many people have done, you will hear or notice that infamous trend or transition of, I'm starting the new year off right, I'm letting folks go. If you are doing it right, you can let people go as the year progresses. And that is no exception to anyone or anybody or anything involved. There were a few people who kind of put themselves in the position of being sent off and being let go and released and things of that nature. And that decision was made, and it's been moved forward. So with that losing of connections, that meant that there were new connections that's been gained. A much more positive rapport has been placed around me. I've kind of, my core friends are my friends. That won't change. There are new faces though that I've just gotten a better connection with as far as having conversation and reaching out. There were some times where even folks who I've been the closest to weren't the greatest in their communication or their conversation, but they still were able to talk to me and kind of come clean about stuff. So I'm okay with that, because I know it's not in some cases I can be perceived or viewed as being a hard, quote unquote, hard read, a hard person to talk to. Next thing that was really big for me this year that I put off, and I was tired of putting off, and I needed to do it for myself, was facing something that I really don't like facing. And this is going to be a much personal discussion that I usually would not have in any other time or any other year scenario. But today is a little different. And that is related to credit, finances, debt, things of that sort. So there were a couple of accounts that, and even to this day, I still have the journal with that information, being what cards I owed on, who I needed to pay, how I need to get it knocked out, what I need to do to either, reestablish, repair, fix my credit. And I talked with those who I need to pay off. Luckily, I was able to get funds to get that taken care of. And it worked to my advantage. So I got those bills paid off, and no, I didn't do anything before anybody asked. Well, two things. One, there was nothing illegal done to get it accomplished. And two, I know everyone's been doing the 100 turns into 800 thing and all that type of stuff. But I just was able to go about learning my resources and learning the business way of my employment. So that helped out a lot. And it was able to help me knock out majority of my credit cards and various forms of debt. The debt that I'm still having to battle with, that most people probably still have as their worst ally, is Sally Mae or student loans. So been working hard on getting that, chipped at and chewed down month by month, and we'll just do what we can. So paying off debt has been very important. Luckily this year I was able to get a secure card with Capital One, which was a good thing. And that's been very useful and very reliable as far as helping build and reestablish my credit. So it's almost, tying into it earlier about, branding and rebranding. I had to rebrand my finances and rebrand my credit a little bit, which it happens. So I was luckily able to succeed in getting that accomplished. Pushing forward, this kind of started in started in 2000, like the end of 2016, but all of 2017 I've experienced it, and now I can finally give my personal input about it, and that is Apple Music, or rather streaming music. Because anyone that knows me knows, why do I need to get music? Why do I need to stream music? I have just about any song or artist that I want at my disposal. But then I learned as time progresses that carrying around a specific hard drive with that information isn't really going to be the best source or the best option in getting music. Now, of course, you have to factor in with all that's been going on in the news, if you've been under a rock. It was not addressed in any shows recently, but net neutrality became a big deal. So, if no internet or no access or no data, then that we run into the battle when it comes to streaming music. But I did finally, I won't say cave in, but I did make a decision on joining a subscription service. If I was to say that I was window shopping before I got Apple Music, my options primarily would have been Spotify, Pandora, and iTunes or Apple Music. I didn't really care for SoundCloud. I get what SoundCloud is doing, but SoundCloud is not like actual music to some degree. Like, it's music as far as like local artists who are trying to come up, grow up, glow up, whatever you want to term it. But just general getting songs and listening to songs. I knew a lot of people had Spotify. I was indifferent about whether I wanted to do Spotify. Pandora, of course, was the benefit of pretty much having a playlist kind of just run its course, and you could skip as much as you wanted to, and you didn't get any advertisements, and that was great. And I know, the first thing a lot of people say is, well, you could still use Pandora Plus if you had an Android and knew how to work it. But that's my decision. I live with what I did. And of course, I'm not jailbreaking my iPhone. A lot of people have wondered and been concerned with that, but not going to happen. So I did choose Apple Music. And like going back to my main presentation, Apple Music is not that bad. It's not 100%, but it's not that bad. I've been able to, there are very few times that I don't find a song. And in the event of not finding the song, I can usually, YouTube is undefeated for a reason. And I'll just kind of leave it as that. But I will say that I have gotten a better growth when it comes to how I use Apple Music. Because literally between making playlists and listening to other people's playlists, it's one of the greatest things in the world to me. And I've been able to luckily admit that and come clean about it. Continuing into the next topic, there have been a lot of people who I have heard this from who are looking to either listen to podcasts, want to know some information about podcasts, just kind of get a feel for whether they're interested in podcasting, etc., etc. I will tell you, first and foremost, and this is what I thankfully did not do. Don't just jump into it. I know a lot of people who have jumped into podcasting, said they want a podcast, talk about it, may do some shows, shut down, may come back, shut down again, things of that sort. My biggest advice, and this, I think it's helping me now, it's not the worst thing or the worst idea if you decide to take a break from podcasting. I know for me personally, taking a break was one of the best decisions I made to benefit my show. And I say it with that term or with that usage because you can sometimes then sit back and say, okay, let me see what I've done wrong or what I've been doing wrong that has not been helping the show or helping the listener understand this point or that point that's being made during the show. Now, as I mentioned, first and foremost, I know a lot of people, even those who have Apple phones or have iPhones, don't have or do not access podcast app itself. So I will recommend 2 apps to both Android and iPhone users. And then I'll kind of give some other places that my shows are located to kind of give you an idea of listening to shows. Overcast for Apple or for iPhone in the Apple Music Store or iTunes Store is one of the simplest, quickest ways to find different podcasters who are podcasting and to listen to their shows. It's been one of those apps that I really didn't think I would like at first, but as I've used it, I found it to be very convenient. One of the convenient features that I have found for it to be my turn on is if you're listening to a show, it has a feature where it will automatically adjust the speed of the show because there are going to be parts of shows that are going to be slow. And there are going to be parts of the show that may go a little too fast, so you may need it to kind of bring things down a little bit. And Overcast is able to adjust that information on the fly. I will be sure to add the link for Overcast, so that way if you are interested or it's an app that you're looking to use, definitely can recommend that. And to my Android babies, don't feel like y'all left out. I'm always going to be for equal opportunity. I did not forget where I come from or where I came from. Android G1, my touch. I have Android stories for days. Pre-Android or pre-G1, I was a sidekick junkie, so I never forget. But to my Android lovers, to my Galaxy fanatics, to my Samsung, du jour, and my Apple haters, Podcast Addict is a very reliable app to listen to shows on your Android device. There's no specific link to it, but I can go ahead and get the link for Google Play Store, and that way you'll have it to listen to if you want to check out any shows, either from my podcast or from any other podcast. One thing that I'm going to talk about now, and this is kind of a thing that a lot of people don't really hear about or really see about, but this is kind of me letting you, as I've said numerous times, and I will say, I'm inviting you into the world of me as a podcaster. So many people who know me from the blogging side have heard me mention this, or I've said this on occasion. One of the easiest things to get into, but the hardest thing to get out of, is a headspace. And that term gets used very loosely. I'm not going to make this could possibly more than likely be its own podcast, which I can definitely make that a possibility. But I will say to anyone that every day is not going to be a great day. That's number one. Number two, if you go through those phases where days may or may not feel great, it's okay. Just know, like, others, if they really are your support system or they really are there for you, they'll get it. I have had my days where life has been good, and I've had my days where I really didn't want to be bothered with anybody. And I've not really addressed it with everyone, because in most cases I'm usually sending text messages, just checking, seeing how people are doing, pulse checking, just kind of getting the feel, like, let's get a pulse of the room, let's get a pulse of the day, let's see how everyone is. And in most cases, I can tell that people have had a lot of things on their mind, let alone I've had a lot of things on my mind. Journaling has helped me. Obviously, podcasting has helped me. Blogging accordingly has helped me. I'll put it in that term. Just simple ways of getting through have gotten me literally over the hump. And an app that I did find an app related to Headspace. You'll hear a lot of apps too. And the Headspace app I stopped using for a while, but I feel like introducing it back to my routine will be very important for the new year. And that's kind of the best way to put it. Next thing, and I've kind of mentioned this before, but I'll kind of be consistent in saying it. The weekly shows are going to be the trend. There will be some non-weekly shows, as I always like to share with you all. The weekly show trend, I'm sharing that and stating it because I did talk about this in the apps and I skipped over it, and this was something I was supposed to mention, so I'm adding it in here. iHeartRadio and TuneIn. If you look for the past podcast or the past Brian, either or, it's going to be tough to find. Because with those specific apps, they had it where I was mainly able to have the link be through the weekly episode, because that's the more consistent podcast. My other shows, you kind of have to find them through other apps, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's out of my hands. I'm working on that and learning, how to be more consistent with getting shows out there. But iHeartRadio and TuneIn, if you have those apps, if you look for the past weekly episodes, you'll find it'll look like there are a bunch of sport activities. You'll see a basketball, football, baseball, musical notes, tech related. Looks like it's a crumbled piece of paper as a background. You'll notice it, and that's where you can go and check out the weekly shows that I do record. Also, to add to that, the shows are going to have a much more consistent flow, which I did mention earlier. I've been really working hard on making sure of that, especially with looking at how easy it is to just follow an outline. And it's taking me 2%, taking me back to a communication class when I was in college, where you just kind of look at what you have listed, you see what's to address. I share it with you all, and I give my insight, which which you all are listening to now. So there's that factor. Running, kind of blending in with the weekly shows. We had the weekly shows, the non-weekly shows. The podcast every day in August and the podcast every day in April will be returning. There will be new intros and outros. I've said that as well. Even though I'm not using, even though I don't address it very often, my personal blog still exists, which means my personal blog will still get attention. So if you are still following bright82.wordpress.com, don't leave. I will be still doing blogs there. I also want to address that as well in this podcast. Just because I did the podcast for the close of the year, it's not that I don't want to write the blog for it. I just know if I do both, it won't. I would have to literally cut off from the world for about a week to break down everything, especially as to how I'm addressing it now. I've mentioned this earlier. I'll mention it again. Season 1, as of the apology episode, because this episode is kind of just a blend in, kind of a buffer or space. Season 2's episodes will begin as of January 1st. And that means that if we do a show while we're at Magfest, it's going to go into season 2. It'll be under non-weekly episodes. You will definitely want to tune into that show if it occurs. I have a feeling there's a 85 to 95% chance that we'll be doing a show. I can sense it. But after Magfest, after recovering, after recouping, things of that nature, that following week we'll be back. There will be lots of sports content because a lot will have gone on between NBA, NFL, things of that sort. So we'll have that all set up and lined up for season 2. Since I'm on the laptop and since multitasking is not as challenging as it used to be, I will go ahead and address something that's going to help you all as listeners and also help me as a content creator. Within the past week, I did go ahead and decide to give my laptop an upgrade. Did not expect to, wasn't sure if I would ever do this at the time that I did, which is this year, or do it at all, but it got done. And I'm very glad that I did. I'll give the good first and then I'll give the bad afterward. And it was kind of ironic because they were done in reverse. So for the good, I was able to go ahead and upgrade my RAM, which was initially 4 gigabytes of RAM, to 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now, a lot of you will probably say, why are you talking about gigabytes and RAM? Like, we know what you're talking about. So I'll give it to you in a more simpler term. As a daily, everyday user on a device, I'll put it in the smartphone terms. Anyone who uses a smartphone has 8 or 9 apps running at one time. 8 or 9 apps running at one time can be a good thing, or it can be a bad thing on your computer or on your phone. With computers, there's no exception. If you load or run a simple program, say Microsoft Word, having Microsoft Word, having Google Chrome, having multiple apps be open at the same time, or multiple programs be open at the same time on your computer, is pulling from the energy or pulling from the device itself. So adding the RAM helped out for a good bit of taking a lot of stress off my laptop. My other task that I did, which I was surprised I got it done, but thankfully it was not as bad as I thought it would be, is I got my hard drive upgraded. Now, first and foremost, it wasn't an upgrade as far as getting a larger memory not a memory, but larger storage. I got the same storage, I just got a faster hard drive. Hard drive I had was a basic everyday hard drive. I was able to change it from a regular hard drive to a solid slate drive, which means it runs through if running the operating system, it runs from it, but it's not using as much energy to run, not just the operating system, but the programs within the operating system. Perfect example. I'm using, as many of you know, I use Adobe Audition for my recording. Now, in most cases, Adobe Audition, when it loads up, takes an eternity. When I had my old hard drive, it would literally almost take 3 or 4 minutes to load up. There were even instances where I would click on opening Audition and it wouldn't open. Now, with the new hard drive, with the new RAM, it's not even 20 seconds. 30 seconds maybe is the max that it takes to load up. So the program and the app and the process, it's doing its job with no problem. Didn't expect it. Didn't know it would be as good as it was, but it worked out good. If you are reading the show notes and if you see this, you'll probably see the word surgery. And the reason I say surgery, because I guess I should go ahead and give this story. So while I was so I did work before doing the upgrade, because I did the upgrade personally myself. A lot of you may or may not know this. This is another fun fact about BT. I actually, and this is part of why I talk about tech on the podcast. I work on computers. I fix computers. I'm that guy who can take a computer, break it down, build it back up, no problem. No issues, no concerns. So with my laptop, I was able to go ahead, take out like I said, I did the RAM a couple of days later because I didn't have it, but I did the hard drive first. So I was at work, got off at midnight, came home, had 2 energy drinks and some M&Ms, I think, and about 11 hours later, I was slowly able to get between getting the hard drive installed, getting the information to be processed, to be transferred. It was a very tedious process, but it got done. That was the main thing, but it was definitely a piece of work, but it was worthwhile work. I'll coin it as that. And I don't regret it at all. Next thing that I'm going to talk about now, which it's a story, but it's not a story, and I'll share why I stated as such. Almost a couple years ago. It's been, I would almost say around this time last year, if not earlier. There was this trend that was coming up that came about that no one really was sure how it would go, but it happened. And it was the Fidget Cube. They were talking about if you have anxiety, depression, stress, things of that sort, get this Fidget Cube. You can, click, click, click. It's basically the equivalent to the person who has the ink pen that clicks with the ink pen, or may have something to make sounds or noises. This is a more intricate or intimate, less noisy way of doing those things without needing that actual product. So the Fidget Cube was supposed to be the thing. It was going to be coming out. It was going to be ready, available, all well and good. Well, in 2016, I had gotten multiple prototypes of the Fidget Cube that were very far off, but were practically the same as the original Fidget Cube that was coming out. So I went through those. Some I did give to others, or some people had them, things of that sort. And then the official Cube finally was out. Even with it being released, they were behind the curve because out of nowhere, the fidget spinner became this big trend and this big craze. And no one expected it, but it happened. So the spinner was kind of to take over, and the fidget spinners come in large variations. Whereas the Fidget Cube, there weren't many variations other than it being a cube. People did the I want to say a dodecahedron. I'm probably mispronouncing it. It was a 12-sided device, and it was too much. Some things you just don't mess with, and this was one of them. They were trying. I got the process, I got the logic, but it wasn't good. So that happened. Like I said, eventually when the Cube finally did come out, or they finally were able to send them to people, it took forever for a lot of people get to have their Cube shipped. I believe I got mine in the spring of this year. And to this day, I'm going to be very honest. The spinners, I have a couple of fidget spinners now. I believe I have 2 at work, and that's about it. I think one here. And as far as Fidget Cubes go, I have 1. And that was the main one. The other ones, they're somewhere, but I really don't use them that often. But the main cube that I did buy, that I spent an eternity waiting for, it stays with me pretty much at all times. I keep it in my pocket. And a lot of times, depending on where I am, it will be used because it works for its cause. And that's just the best way to put it. So next thing so there's that was the trend, and that was a thing for me at one point. that kind of gave me peace and sanity that a lot of people may or may not know about. So if you ever see like a device that has like a red, looks like it's in a red prism, and the device is literally the holder for it is called a prism. It's the actual cube, which is black. I was preferring to get the black one. The one that I truly wanted was, I think it was called, well, they had dice, but they had one that was like, it was gray and it had red buttons. I wanted that one. Couldn't really find it. Then I know they brought out one that had the mixed colors on it, but couldn't find that one. It was kind of a rare hot commodity. And then there was the one that I got, which was all black, which was fine. It works for me, and it's simple enough, so I'm good. So if you're looking if you're looking to get one now between a cube or a spinner, 7-Eleven, what's the name of the other store? Walmart, you can get them for pretty cheap now. So next thing that I'll get into, which was a big part of branding for me, big part of growth for me and adjusting, was that in September there was a huge change coming within my company, within my job. They were attempting to close the department that I was working under, and it was kind of the basis of look for employment or accept the role and just kind of roll with it. So I was able to luckily apply for a couple of positions, ended up getting a job, which was also a promotion. Now, I give this story in two parts for a couple of reasons. Well, first and foremost, I was able to get the promotion, which was a good thing. Now, as of yesterday, I was getting shift differential, which was great, working late, but I was tired. And that kind of, had his bumps and bruises, but luckily I was able to get through that. And they were able to kind of offer if anyone wanted to get a new shift, which I was able to get a newer shift. So actually, ironically enough, despite tomorrow being New Year's and everyone will be kind of celebrating or recovering from their New Year festivities, I'll be getting that money. So I will be doing what I do, probably be working on some podcast stuff as always. And I'll explain that even more in depth and later on in the show. One thing that happened to me this summer that I never expected, well, I knew that the moment was coming, but I did not realize that I was going to be a part of the moment, literally. And that was my friend, one of my best friends, and his partner. They got married, and they're happy. They are very happily involved and happily married, and I'm very happy for them. And it was a fun experience. Like that was a one-off, but it was a fun one-off as far as just rolling with the flow of how much fun it is to be around. It's already fun when you're around your friends, but when you're around your friends for a moment, experiencing two men get married and seeing two people happily involved with each other is the greatest feeling. What was ironic about the wedding, is that as I was there, like before the wedding got started, everyone was kind of, just kind of hanging out, sitting, chilling, before everything got going. And there was a specific point where, we were told to wear a certain type of clothes, but we didn't put two and two together. Well, at least I didn't, because I'm late to the party always. And it was reminded, and I got this look from my roommate who was basically telling me that, hey, you do know you part of the wedding, right? Like, you need to come up here. So I got the evilest eye of all time through the window, and I always remember that moment from this year. So that's one of my big peak points that happened at the wedding itself, but also as a whole. Just it was a good wedding. It was a nice wedding. It was beautiful. It was very convenient. I know it was tough for my friend who got married, because it was like, his father was there, things of that nature, but nonetheless, it was a good time. This next part that I'm going to get into has been my strong point, and we're kind of creeping, and I'm making sure like I'm on pace, I'm on time, so I'm good with numbers. I know a lot of y'all aren't really a lot. If you stuck around at this 45-minute mark, trust me, it's appreciated. If you may or may not be surprised, I'm not gonna have an intro and outro because I'm working on that still. But for whatever reason, this year everyone didn't have the positive greatest of years. And I get it. It hasn't been rainbows and sunshines and ice cream and lollipops and all that stuff. One thing that helps people get through their lives or their days or their routines is prayer. Without an exception, the first thing I think of when it comes to praying or, offering or providing prayer is for those who lost anyone that was close to them. A lot of people lost family members. A lot of people lost parents. And I'm mainly just making this that point of, if you lost anyone, even if it was they passed, they're no longer in your life, wherever that place may be, that you get through it. And try not to do it all on your own or try to make it like everything's okay. Because a lot of times everything can be okay for that moment, or you can run yourself rampant and get through it and think it's all well and good, but in reality it's not. So I'm just stating to you all, if it's that moment of you got to talk about it, or if it's like, hey, it's something I need to address and figure out and put some pieces into place, talk to somebody. You can talk to me. Y'all know I'm honest and transparent in what I try to tell. This will be a 2-part, and I'll just kind of let the truth flow where it may. A lot of people helped me grow, and there was a lot of growth that went on. The best way I can put it is, if it wasn't for, First of all, I'll say it because it's reality. My friends who always know me and they will listen to this or hear me talk about this show, and I'll probably give shout outs and attention to it at some point. But shout out to the cool kids, because we have always wanted to be the cool kids, and we always knew we were cool and awesome anyway. But coming together like we have and like we still do has been one of the highest points of growth and transition. I know, like I said, this year it's been 4 years since I went through my foolishness and ignorance, and I know when everything went on, even after I was getting things back on track, they were the first ones there. They were the first ones making sure I was all right. Other friends and family, other friends were checking into. A lot of it was me talking to them or addressing it. One of my friends, Kim, who doesn't live here in Richmond, well, I'm giving location, but whatever, but she lives here, close, not too far, but she's been anytime I know I need like that true source or that true venting resource, I can go, that's my go-to, whether it's through text or through email or through a Google chat. It's so many Google Hangout conversations that people don't have a clue went on, but that's been kind of my resource. My roommate, who's getting her life together, which I'll bring that up in my next topic, has been like a big resource, a big help in just kind of calling me out on stuff. You've heard her in a couple of podcasts as well. Most of the people who are part of the Cool Kids have been in a podcast or have made a cameo at some point. So, trust me, they've all been very beneficial in helping me grow. The WYD friends, the new friends who are helping me with branding, growth. Naming everybody one by one would be so impossible, but just to kind of put it into an overall perspective, anyone and everyone who has just seen me transition, it's been appreciated. Speaking of transitions, I feel like the biggest transition that I made this year that I don't really, I don't know if I was going to believe that it happened, but I'm glad it happened. And that is that I moved. I was able to kind of fall into a good situation at a good time. My roommate, she was, she needed, my twin, she needed, was looking for someone help out. I've been needing to kind of get myself back on track, and this has been kind of like a one hand feeding the other type process. So it's worked out pretty good, and I will admit I have no regrets towards any of it. 1 second. All right, we're back, and we're going to continue in regards to the, everyone I've talked about, friends helping me grow. And it was kind of ironic because having that little bit of time offline or that little bit of time away kind of helped to give me a few more topics and some things to kind of give as tidbits and beneficial thoughts to the new year. And I'm gonna just dive in and just go right into it. Like I said, I moved on my own. I moved with my roommate, and we've helped each other a lot. She's, helped me with getting through a lot of my special moments and things that I've done wrong, and trying to make other people, I am always guilty of trying to make it my fault when it's not my fault, and I don't like doing that, and I'm tired of doing it, and it's gonna change. And I'm not just saying it verbally. I literally am sticking to my guns and getting that accomplished. That being said, it's going to come down to little things and learning how to address and how to approach that. I'm going to talk about that as well in a few moments. One other task or activity that did come with 2017 was a game that I started playing, but I really didn't know how it would go as far as playing the game. But now that I've played it a little bit more consistently and just had more free time or downtime to just mess around and learn the game, I'm playing more League of Legends, and I actually am a lot better than I realized at playing the game. It's little stuff that I'm still learning, just such as knowing when being too close is too close for comfort or discomfort, and that's causing me to learn more like, okay, I'm too close, let me back off, or I'm doing too many things, let me step away. And if I feel that it's not a reciprocation of what I deserve or where I belong, then it's important. Yeah, that just kind of, and that did kind of segue randomly away from League of Legends, but the game itself, I'm getting better. I did finally, the group who I play with, they actually use Discord, so that was right on time. So we can all jump into a Discord chat and just kind of go at it, which I am all for. And that when I've watched people play specific games, I didn't understand. Like I understand. So techie talk again. I understand Discord. I love Discord. I value Discord for what it does. I didn't realize how great it was because at first everybody was talking about TeamSpeak. But Discord is literally the one-stop shop. You can chat in it. You can type in it. You can voice chat, group chat, whatever. It's right on time. So League of Legends has introduced me to learning, for instance, when you get near a turret and you're trying to take a turret down. You can take a turret down from a distance, but if you get in the turret's zone, prepare to catch those hands. And that's no exception with that game. I've watched a lot of, and speaking of gaming, I've watched a lot of Street Fighter. I've watched a lot of Tekken. Tekken did come out. Tekken has been my go-to. A little bit of an emotional moment. My Xbox did have a bit of a I want to die moment going on, so it's available but not functioning like I want it to. So I'm having my joys and qualms with that, if that's a good way to put it. So I'm doing my best to deal with it as anyone else would, but it is what it is. Now this next topic just kind of hit today, but it hits with a reason and an application to just average everyday life. We all do it. We all have known about it. Anyone who uses messaging programs, well, messaging programs are kind of non-existent at home now because most people just text each other. But programs like Google Hangouts, AOL, Instant Messenger when it was alive, Skype is going to be the one that I'll talk about today. But other programs like that, it's mainly for statuses, and it's just a matter of which status that you're in. And we kind of bounce back and forth between statuses intentionally and unintentionally. Those four are available, busy, away, and offline. Available means you're available, you can talk, you're open book, you're willing to discuss, etc., whatever. Busy means you're doing things, you're working on activities, and you're keeping yourself visible enough to be available, but you're doing something that is causing you to not be at your moment of, hey, you can contact me, or hey, you can reach out to me. Away means you could have stepped away for a while, or you could be just sitting there and you're just you checked out, or you're just kind of chilling. Most cases, away can be if you're even down to when you're sleeping. That's the away time. Offline is a little different, and I'm going to explain this how I always explain this with a lot of people. And I've seen myself doing this enough where this will probably become a blog, so I wouldn't be surprised. In our daily lives and in our routine, we become, like I said, I've mentioned all four, but it's mainly two that stand out the most. You're either online or you're offline. Most people know their online side, but don't really have an offline side. And it's a matter of, with life and with time, learning how to utilize and obtain that offline side. For instance, after this recording, after some listening, possibly a nap, I'm going to enjoy a little bit of offline time because tomorrow I'm back online. Online for me is going back to work. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot of times by nature we are off of work, but we're still online. Or even worse, and I've seen people do this and I still to this day have not figured it out, where you're offline you're offline and you're getting ready to come into work, but you're still offline because you have things going on outside of work that you brought into your work state of mind. Explicit content coming, just going to warn you now. When you get to a place of employment, one of the worst things you can do is bring your fucks with you. Bring your problems, bring your issues, bring your concerns. As I coined in reference to a couple of days ago, the chick is coming back with the bags on her back and the things that she's leaving behind in 2017 and the steps she's taking towards 2018. If the fucks are in the bag and you bring them in, it's not going to benefit the year. That being said, if you come in and you leave all those problems and those issues at the door, it makes coming in and it makes the transition just that much easier. At least that I've noticed. I could be wrong, but it's at least from my immediate and initial observation of life. So if you are able to find that time and find that piece or that portion of, let me take a break from life. Let me take a break from myself. And sometimes I know for me early, and I say it, I'm using these references, and I will admit, and this kind of blends into the podcast a little bit because I did talk about the website, but I didn't give a lot of information because this is huge. Back in, I want to say it was May of this year, I went out of town. Took a little bit of a BT break. The BT break was for me to chill. Yes, that's not going to even be lied about or fooled. But the BT break was also meant for me to complete a task with my podcast that I was having the hardest time completing, which was getting my website updated. The first part before doing that was making sure that my DreamHost and my GoDaddy and my WordPress all were able to talk to each other so that once this site is up, it's up, we're done, we're good, everything's great. GoDaddy was fine. DreamHost was kind of having moments. WordPress, the information wasn't coming over properly. So it was a big pain in the throat. Bottom line. Just as clean and clear as I can say it. So that was May. Fast forward, we'll say a few days, because I believe today is Sunday. So on Thursday, either Wednesday or Thursday, I finally did it. I was able to finally go back and get all of my episodes updated and adjusted so that they were in order and that they're on the website. So now I no longer have to say, oh, go to iTunes, or you have to go to Podcast Addict. You can just go to pastpodcast.com and listen to any episode. They're in archive by month. I know that's going to kind of throw people off. My easiest reference or recommendation, April and August will be the quicker ones, because you can get all of the episodes from Podcast Every Day in August and Podcast Every Day in April. I will be working on tagging shows because I did want to have that completed again. But the number one task and the hardest activity of all was getting the pages up. I'm sharing that story and I'm stating that because in that time of me being offline, I was still available, but I was available branding wise. There's that word again. And it was for the benefit of the cause, and it came to fruition just fine. Everything was great. I just was glad. I was primarily excited of the fact that I got the page to work where everything showed up. I was even more excited when I could see sites or see articles or posts going to the WordPress site on past podcasts. So those little things just made it even more worthwhile. My next topic, and we're kind of creeping into the home stretch with everything. The next thing I'm going to talk about is something that I have been consistently working on, but not realizing the extent of the work towards it, and that is the maintaining of feelings. Since we just talked about websites, this will kind of work hand in hand. Anytime a person does a website, the assumption is, okay, you do a website, you load it up, post it online, and that's it. It's done. But the reality is, what makes or breaks a site is the maintenance and the fixings and the adjustments. And that's truly how feelings work. A lot of times we try to maintain and handle our feelings personally and specifically. Between eggshells, between making people happy, between trying to make things right, trying to amend ties, keep the peace, lower the tension, it puts a toll on you and drains you. I was trying to find troll and train, and it was just all just going bad. It strains you, literally. Anyone who's listening to this podcast who personally knows me, yes, I'm going to help other people in networking. I'm going to talk about that literally in a couple of bullet points. But I'm no longer here to fix people's problems. If you need help and it's like, hey, I've talked to everyone, I've asked all, gone on my resources, I'm hoping you can help. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. But if I'm like in the immediate options of, hey, I was thinking you would be a good source to do this, this, and this, no. Or let alone trying to fix something that I wasn't even put in a position to fix. Those days are gone. Those moments are gone. This podcast will be my staple and my reminder in knowing that they're gone. And I'm sticking to that. I'm not just saying it for fluff and for PR. I'm very serious and I'm sticking to that. I'm proud of myself because the other part of this with maintaining feelings is something that I've always done, and I'm working on letting others know not to do it because I shouldn't even be doing it. I find myself apologizing for things that I have nothing to do with or aren't even my fault to begin with. If something is going on in my surroundings or in my moment, even if it happens, you all shouldn't have to. I mean, I can say, hey, we can just keep it moving. Things happen. But taking that moment in that time of my apologies, my fault, I didn't mean for it to go. Done. It's gone. Removing it from my vocabulary. Spent time with someone, a friend of mine yesterday, and in talking with them, it was coming back, and it's like it's always that you're doing good and you feel like you're relapsing, and it's the worst feeling. Long story short, apologies. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. My fault. My bad. Won't happen again. Things of that nature. I'm breaking it. And if that means breaking it means I could break away and lose people, I can't be there and do everything for everybody. I can't win every battle or every war like that. I won't win every battle or war like that. And it's not happening. So one thing that I will be working on to kind of give me a foundation or a start off for 2018, because I've never done one before, and this is gonna be a fun story, and I'll kind of make it a 2-part story because that's just me and I don't give a fuck. But I have, so first and foremost, and I was thinking, do I want to tell what I'm doing, or do I want to tell? I'll tell what I did this year, and this will be exposed now. So I will go ahead and make sure I do the social prep for it when I finish. December, a friend of mine came to me with an idea, somewhat of a challenge, and it was called Surrender December, or the December Challenge, where each day you write down one thing that you're going to surrender. And I'll come clean. I had a lot of things that I planned on surrendering. One of them is this thing that I'm referring to now. But some of them are getting my podcast to become an LLC, shutting down, bullying, anger, time and space, getting more inclined with music, losing weight, investing, doing more volunteer hours, my big comfy couch and my comfort level, being willing to be uncomfortable even if it means risking your comfortability, remaining cool. Like, these are a couple of things. If you follow me on Instagram at Brat82, you'll get to see all of them. And I tried to make sure I did the Surrender December for each one, but I definitely did do that. But one of the things that I did work on, or one of the things that I put, because I've been thinking about doing it, but I never would actually do one because I don't feel like I'm artsy enough. And that's a vision board. So first thing I decided was, you know what? And I caught heat for it, but whatever. It was me being me because I did it the way I thought it would work. And that was, you know what? I'm going to take all of the visions that I put on Instagram, put them all in little box collages together, and make a collage. Done. Of course, that was unacceptable, but it was unacceptable on the terms of, if I'm going to do one, do a real one, at least starting out. So I did, and I'm working on that. I'm hoping once I'm done that I'll be able to take a picture of it and show it off. And that'll be a fun, little 2% experience. But I can say with a straight face that I'm going to have fun with this. Because vision boards is a vision board is the perfect example of discomfort or uncomfort. And I'm going to do my best to have fun with it, because it's only fitting. So I'll be working on that, and it has I'll tell you, as anyone who knows me knows, it will consist of, it'll be broken down in three parts. I won't say what they are, because if I tell it now, it will defeat the whole purpose of doing it. So it'll have what I need. It'll go over some things that I am looking to work on. It'll be fun. That's the best direct yet indirect way of addressing it. So with that being the case, and with that being my staple of my vision board, because one part of it I will talk about now, but it'll be talked about, but it won't be talked about. And I'm going to just let it fly. And that is my motto for 2018. Part of my motto is, one portion of my motto I did kind of address earlier, and that is, I will not be the fixer of everyone's problems. That ends. That will be a motto for next year. No more fixing others' issues. Not doing it. Can't do it. From my own perspective, because I've always known that I've done this, but I'm also going to be implementing this as a presentation and an approach with my friends and with family. I'm looking to get branding for myself, let me backtrack. I'm looking to get branding in another avenue. And that consists of using the term brand like you mean it. A couple of days ago on Snapchat, I did announce this. And I did share with some of my followers that you will see hashtags BLYMIBT. Now, I initially did BLYMI by itself, but I realized that Brush Like You Mean It had that covered. So Brand Like You Mean It will be specifically for me, and it's going to say BT. I will possibly see if I can do it for Blimey BT and Blimey PP for past podcasts. Or the past, one of the two. TP. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Like I said, it'll likely be BT since I'm the main face with the podcast. But what does Brand Like You Mean It mean? And what does that entail? Well, basically, everyone has a skill or a talent or a gift or something that they're able to do, and they want others to know that they're doing it. The problem is networking with other people is not as A to Z as it used to be. It's literally the infamous phrase of not what you know, but who you know. So my plan now is to get those who I know to know other people who are doing things that can help the others and get them in their comfort place to their next step or next level. Am I expecting it to be an overnight success? Absolutely not. Do I feel like networking this way will introduce and expose more people to others and their brand? Yes. And I say that with such confidence strictly because sometimes branding has to be done within/internally. Meaning that, hey, I see you're doing, you're selling blankets. Let me repost what you're posting. Some people I'll tell them. Some people I just do it. And then a lot of people probably look at my page like, why are all of my things being reposted by someone online? So this will be done with my personal page, with Bright82. And I will be doing this with past podcasts as well, as far as getting other podcasts out there. All I ask in return is if you see that I posted a story or posted an episode, get it to your hundreds of followers or hundreds of listeners. Because they may want to listen to what I'm randomly talking about, such as shows like this. But it could be the one show or the one factor that someone may need. So it's just something that I think about as something that I look at as an option. So, I mentioned Surrender December. I talked about, my motto for 2018. And I have one last bit that I'm going to do, and then we're going to wrap this up. And that is my plans for 2018. Now, 2017 was a progressive and a prosperous and a positive year. It's positive with an asterisk only because a lot of things happened that were tough to face and deal with around me, but it still was an acknowledgement that it happened. I can come clean in sharing with you all that 2018 is going to be very, as I was talking about with the Skype references, 2018 will be very busy. I'm not looking to do as much sitting and idling as I've done before. I've been away a lot. And being away is not always good. Being offline, you always need that offline time is what rejuvenates you for when you come back and available. But offline, away, like busy time. I'm sorry, I'm literally confusing myself. Away time can kind of cause you to miss those moments that you should be busy working on something. I've shared this on numerous occasions. I've talked to people about this. It is going to happen next year. I'm going to California to make a trip. I always say in my mind, I'm going and I don't know if I'm coming back. I probably will, but I got to see what happens when it occurs. To add to that, within the next year, I was going to initially do Podcast Movement, but things happened and I was unable to get a ticket for it when I was planning to. But I am still on the verge or within the sights of going to Podcast Movement. I'm going. There's no pretty or cute way of putting it. I'm overdue. If I don't go to and to add to, if I don't go specifically to Podcast Movement in Philadelphia, I'm going to a podcast event in the U.S. Preferably and currently on the East Coast. I've done enough recording for myself, but I want to do more learning and sponge. I guess you can call it sponging and knowing like, all right, let me see what made this person's podcast a success or what got them riled up and motivated. Because everyone's source of motivation is different. And we sometimes don't know that or realize the extent of that until we see everything come or happen full circle. I'm going to be more aware of my surroundings with advice and suggestions and recommendations, but I'm also going to make my decisions with more thought and with more tact and not just from the hip. I've done a lot of from the hip shit and it's just not worked. Bottom line. It's not really a pretty way of putting it. And that's kind of where I'm at with those tasks currently. There's a high possibility that I'll be attending another wedding 2018. I'm excited about that. Not jumping too far ahead of myself because I know it's in the works. Just a matter of it coming together and getting completed. So I leave you all now. I know I'm like, all right, well, that was the last thing you're done. You should be good. Now I'm gonna give you, because I always like to do this at the end. Whenever I would do the blog, I would always give like little tidbits and little tricks. I call them my personal like BT tips and tricks, things that either have worked for me, things that I knew or learned from, and knowing how to approach certain people, certain moments. And I'm gonna come up with these off the hip because some of them either have been recent experiences or just overall experiences in general. First and foremost, I repeat, do not make communication harder than what it is. We're at a stage and at a point now where texting, email, cell phones, landlines, hell, even face-to-face are all available as resources to talk to someone. I've learned recently that nonverbal cues are very direct and very evident, but you can definitely catch on to them with ease. Be more patient with people. And this is, I'm presenting this both ways. This means being patient with others and what they're asking you to do, and letting others to know to be patient with you with what you're trying to work on or trying to get done. Now, if we've been patient for years, then it's time. Then the patience is running thin now. Like I have every right to be impatient, or that person has every right to be impatient, and I can't argue with that. Moving forward, learn from what other people do or what other people have done. Many times we have our story, but we don't realize that our story could be the story that could help someone get through whatever it is they may or may not either be willing to go through or don't see themselves in the midst of. Because those moments can happen too, where you're there, but you don't understand how you got there. All you know is it exists. And I'm gonna leave this as a ending challenge, because I know it's like I could go on, like, as far as things that take away from 2017 or things that carry into 2018. I could give you literally a whopping list of things. But I'm gonna do even one. I'm gonna do you one better. Each day, find a challenge. Face it. Now, when I said face it, I'm not sitting here saying face it as in you gotta win an experience. Like it's gotta be a winning or a worthwhile experience. But just face it. Find a challenge. And don't make the challenge. Don't spend more energy analyzing the challenge instead of getting the challenge completed or working on the challenge. I put this, I've put this off last year, and I'm talking about it now. My A+ certification, my A+ computer work will be done next year. I'm tired of looking, like, I love being a computer person, and I've talked about this earlier with fixing computers. But I want to be able to do my skill on my terms under my finances. And I don't like it. So make that time and take that opportunity to find and embrace a challenge. And if you don't feel like you're able to come up with any, talk to those who know you and see what they challenge you at doing that might draw that discomfort or that uncomfortable level. I know I've done my listening or my talking a lot longer than normal, But there was a lot of information I wanted to discuss and share with the masses because someone needed to know this. Someone needed to know this as far as listening to the show. But most importantly, someone may have got something out of what was said. And if you did, I appreciate you. If you enjoy me rambling this long and you stayed past this 1 hour and 25 minute mark, I definitely give kudos and I give props. I'm gonna go ahead and throw social media links in this show since I won't be doing an intro and outro. But if you are wanting to listen to any shows, if you search for Past Podcasts as one word, you should find me on Google. I'm wanting to say I'm Googleable. I always love to do this test, but I never am sure if I am confirmed to be Googleable yet. And as of right now, I am not with just Past Podcasts. But if you put in Past Podcasts and then put Brian, I'm right on up there. iTunes, Spreaker, you'll get everything with no problem. Working on that. Not rebranding again. If I rebrand again, it's almost like watching Bar Rescue. When a bar is rescued and it's been changed, but then they got to rename again for whatever reason. But yeah, if you go to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, Overcast, Podcast Addict, any of those sources, look for Past Podcasts, look for the past. Look for the past Brian. Look for weekly episodes. Come check me out. Be prepared for a wicked, and when I say wicked, I mean wicked, season 2. Season 2 is going to be a much different flow. I promise you that. But as always, and until next time, the past signing out. This is your host, BT. Y'all take care. And if you listen to it in 2018, you made it another year. And I hope you have a prosperous and positive and encouraging 2018. Y'all take it easy. Peace.